I believe they're out there. I believe that there are intelligent life forms in the galaxy. Galaxy has 100 billion stars, and we know that 100% of them have planets on average. 100% of the stars you see at night have planets going around them. Therefore, they probably have life forms on them, but they don't have to look like us. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. That is the gold standard. The gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, but visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. Now people are looking at what kinds of sensors do we have? What kind of metrics do we have? We now have frame by frame an analysis of these objects. These objects travel between Mach 5 and Mach 20. That's 20 times the speed of sound. These objects can zigzag, and we can measure the g-force inside this object. The g-forces are several hundred times the force of gravity. In other words, any living person's bones would be crushed by these objects.
So one of the main points of contention is the lack of visible propulsion method, right? There's no, essentially, there's no heat signature. There's nothing that we understand to be present that normally exists when something is going at a tremendous rate of speed.
That's right. Not only that, these objects create no sonic booms. When you exceed the sound barrier, you create a gigantic boom that is then shatters windows and can be heard miles around. These objects can effortlessly break the sound barrier and not create a sonic boom. And they don't create any exhaust. We don't see an exhaust trail from these objects. So either they're an optical illusion of some sort, or they have a set of laws of physics beyond what we can muster.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think that this is something that maybe another government from another country has created that far surpasses our abilities, or do you think that this is coming from somewhere else?
Well, the Pentagon has listed, I think, 5 different options. One option, of course, is that they're weather balloons or something that's an artifact of our space program. Maybe a piece of rocket that is plunging back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's one category. Another category is anomalous weather events. They happen, and they have to be looked at very carefully. But the last option is other. That is not just the Russians or the Chinese, because these objects apparently can gyrate faster than what the Chinese and the Russians can muster, but it opened the door to the possibility of other. We're talking about objects that defy the known laws of aerodynamics with a technology beyond what we have today. And so that's why people are scratching their heads. Whose are these things if they're not the Chinese, the Russians, or the United States? These objects can drop 70,000 feet in a few seconds. Think about that. It can drop a tremendous distance in just a few seconds, and they can go underwater. This is something that we didn't realize before, but yes, they can actually go underwater. And they also move without creating an exhaust or breaking the sound barrier. So these are things that we can now document frame by frame, looking at these videotapes.
When a person like yourself, you're in this documentary, A Tear in the Sky.
Nobody's ever done this as far as I know.
It's a huge amount of work, a huge amount of data and equipment. That has never been done.
Whatever this is more complex than we could ever imagine.
This is a first in the field of ufology.
The variety of devices we're bringing as a team to study the phenomenon covered an entire spectrum of different technologies in real time.
That moment shook me to the core because I knew my life was about to change again.
I think we're going to have like a couple of really, really good spots.
When I hear that you've assembled a team of top scientists using state-of-the-art equipment, I say to myself, it's about time.
This is an unidentified, unclassified new phenomenon.
Wow, Tic Tacs. Maybe Tic Tac.
Maybe.
Caught on our cameras.
Yep.
That's incredible.
We can go from body heat to very cold, like about minus 62 Celsius or minus 80 Fahrenheit. Wow. We will be transmitting data up to 800 terahertz in frequency. Our highest technology is up around 500 gigahertz. Triangulating and converging at 2 points, the same object.
It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. It's freaking gone.
That's something over Carolina. We need you up there.
We could be heading towards the biggest "see I told you so" in history.
That's what we need, the smoking gun that'll clinch it. That once and for all will settle the debate. No ifs, ands, or buts. And in the process, rewrite all of human history.
Oh my God, you guys. Is this the wormhole? It's insane.
You're in this documentary, A Tear in the Sky. And for a person like yourself, who is a very well-respected scientist, to be discussing the subject of UFOs, to me it signifies that there's been a shift in the way our culture perceives these things.
That's right. It used to be the third rail of a scientific establishment that if you talked about UFOs, you were pretty much relegated to being a nutcase, and the giggle factor kicks in, right?
Yeah.
But things have changed then, you know, because of the fact that the military is now basically releasing hours of videotapes of things that defy the normal laws of physics. And the military has admitted that, quote, they're not ours. And the military has admitted that, quote, they're not ours. Before there was always that ambiguity that maybe it's a new stealth bomber or a new fantastic device being prepared by the military. Nope. The military now admits that they're not ours. Then the question is, whose are they then?
Yeah.
We have multiple sightings of these objects. By radar, we know the velocity, the distance. Each time it comes out to be real. And so that's why we're scratching our heads. Who has this capability? And the answer is, we don't know.
So the Commander David Fravor event that we talked about off the Nimitz, that was 2004. Do we have an accurate understanding about military capability in terms of like drones and propulsion systems from 2004? Or are there things that are classified that we are not going to have access to? Like, is it possible that, 18 years ago, they had the capability to have a vehicle or a drone move this way, that just that information has just not been released?
Well, 2 years ago, the United States military admitted that it stopped working on these hypersonic drones. Why? They're unstable. They zigzag. And that's why the Russians have put a premium on this technology. To evade our Star Wars program, the Russians wanted a rocket that can maneuver and therefore outwit a stationary Star Wars system designed to shoot down these drones.
Right.
So that's why the Russians have put a priority on this, and they've now fielding in warfare. We actually see them as a military weapon. 2 years ago, the United States military stopped its program. They're too unstable. They were not reliable, and it was not worth the amount of money to put into it, because the military was invested in the Star Wars program, not the anti-Star Wars program. But because Vladimir Putin announced the hypersonic drones, then the United States military said, oops, nope, we have to get into the game too. So now the United States is also working on hypersonic drones, as well as the Chinese. So the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans are all working on these things. But you can see how primitive they are.
2017 New York Times article, in my mind, made that was a big shift, because when the New York Times is reporting about it and saying that this is major news and this is real and there's video evidence that they can't ignore, when you talk to high-level people at the government and people like Commander David Fravor, who had that infamous spotting off of the coast of San Diego, when you hear about people like that are very reputable, it starts to change the conversation in a lot of people's eyes.
Right. See, it used to be that one person would see something in the sky and say, look, Martha, look, there's something up there. Now things have changed. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. That is the gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, but visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. And so the burden of proof has shifted. It used to be the burden of proof was on the people who believe in UFOs. They saw something, prove it. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the Pentagon, to the military. Now they have to prove that these aren't extraterrestrial. And so I think there's been a sea change in the last just several years. 50 years ago, there was a congressional hearing, and it was coming out of Project Blue Book. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of jokes about little green men in outer space. 50 years ago, that's the way it was. Now, things have changed.
So for yourself, what was the shift? And how did you feel about UFOs, say like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, there is this giggle factor, and it's the third rail, of course, of your scientific reputation, if you believe in these things. But the evidence is accumulating over the last several years. Now, when I was first approached by Carolyn Corey, the producer of this film, A Tear in the Sky, I was skeptical. I said to myself, come on. I mean, 5 days you're going to look for flying saucers in the sky? What happens if the aliens are camera shy and they don't show up in 5 days? So I was pleasantly surprised when they actually found something. They actually have photographic evidence of objects that can gyrate just the way the Pentagon has said. And so we now have a sea change. A center of gravity has changed with regards to looking at these objects. We no longer simply look at one individual seeing something in the sky. No, we demand hours of videotape, multiple sightings by multiple modes. That's the gold standard now.